Maria Bowler. Thank you so much for joining me on For Real. It's a delight to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Well, you are first off in 2025. You are inaugurating our new year. So this is an exciting moment for me.
New year, new us, right?
That's right. Well, that's never happened for me, but maybe. We were just chatting right before we started recording about how you are an Iowa girl. You didn't start this way, but now you are. And I didn't even know that. I want to go on record. Your publicist reached out to me. I thought your book sounded fantastic. Read the book, said, please, can she come on? And then in the fine print found that we are sisters in longitude and latitude. I didn't know.
I love it so much, and it's always requires a little explanation of how I ended up here, because people wonder, are you from here? But no,
You're not.
But I am also from a place. It is in Canada, but where people say, "How did you end up there?
Okay,
are you from there?" So I know the vibe. But I met an Iowa boy on the East Coast, and we are here. So I'm loving the Midwest life.
That'll do it. Those Iowa boys can be a little bit persuasive politely persuasive when they want to be. I would love that story. I won't bother you about it now, but I would love to know how the Iowa boy got you from Manhattan to here. He must be charming, kind. Yeah.
Can wear a flannel like nobody else. Yeah.
A flannel will do it. It's true, especially this time of year. If you can wear a flannel, well, we're going to have a conversation. Yeah. Well, listen, I just met you officially, but I feel like I've been hanging out with you because I've been borderline stalking what you put out on the internet, the interweb, and I've been spending a lot of time with your new book, which we're going to talk about today, and I find you delightful. So I want to know how you got to be this way, and this is what I mean by that. Typically, in my life, but also in the lives of a lot of the authors that I chat with, we write into a space that we had to kind of machete out for ourselves, right? We write into something that we either couldn't find before or we needed about 10 years earlier or 5 years earlier. So how did you become this version of Maria Bowler, the force in this content area? How did you come to be this? What happened before you knew to write a book about this?
Wow.
And I'll let you define the this. I haven't even told you the name of your book. The name of the book is Making Time, A New Vision for Crafting a Life Beyond Productivity. So I just want you to go and tell me how this came to be. Why this?
I began as someone who had a lot of expectations to achieve in a kind of your average you can do anything you want to. That was common as a refrain if you were born in the 80s or even 90s. There was this idea, and it's just part of growing up in the particular social sphere at the time of history that I was, and the shape of family I was born into, and I tried so hard for that to be true. But there was always something in me. That even though like one part of me was really striving for the A's and the gold stars and whatever seemed to be an acceptable like shape of life from the outside, and then another part of me either resisted it and also couldn't, but nevertheless I persisted.
Right, totally.
And of course we meet certain kind of crossroads when we are forcing ourselves to achieve. And I think the big one for me was I always wanted to be a writer and also really struggled with writing, which led me to, of course, teaching writing and working with people who were also trying to write and doing it. And I found that the messages that I was hearing from people as I sat across from them as a writing teacher, also as a spiritual director, and I worked as an editor as well at a magazine. And all of these roles had me sitting across from people who were trying to express something. And they all came to me with a similar problem, which was like, I want to do what is in my heart. I want to bring forth what is in my heart so much. And I just can't get it right. I can't seem to do enough.
Mm.
So whether it was schoolwork or prayer or enough time with my family,
Mm-hmm.
they just were coming to me with the sense of like, can I just solve for what I am doing, and then I can be who I really know I am inside. And I thought, oh, that sounds really familiar. That is also my story. And I started to suspect that, in fact, there was no enough, which is a really hard thing to get your mind around. Like, wait a minute. There actually is no formula for getting the balance of my tasks right in order to feel like my insides and my outsides are connected. That took me a long time to sort of accept, and I'm, of course, can't say that I'm fully all the time there. But I was forced to really face enough and not enough when I was pregnant and in my graduate program for writing, and COVID hit and I had a baby and I could literally do nothing. And so I was in a space of just a lot of space, and my husband was away a lot for work. So I was just with myself. And I started pulling the threads together of the conversations I'd had with people, the work I'd done studying contemplation, studying what it meant to sit with yourself in the past. I'd sort of had pieces of it, but I was really confronted with it when I had this bundle of life crying on me. And and I didn't, and this was my daughter had colic. I don't know if you've ever gone through that.
I'm so sorry. What a wonderful pairing. An existential question slog, new baby, weird body, and colic during a pandemic. You were living a new version of your life, Ivy League grad.
Yeah.
It looked a little different.
Right?
Oh, bless your heart. If we'd been a few hours closer and I'd known you were there, I would have brought you something to eat or a bottle of wine or something during those early days that would have helped. I'm so sorry. So colic. Like, that's no sleep for anyone.
No sleep, and you cannot make it stop.
No.
Like there is no trick. Yeah, it's waiting.
Oh, the worst.
But you also can't give up.
No.
Like, because it requires presence and then you have to also stay engaged, right? Maybe rocking this time helps a little bit. Maybe.
Oh gosh. Like, it's the worst. I'm so sorry.
It is. And it was also such a confrontation with like, oh, there is no right thing to do here. You just have to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, that is how I became to be someone who wrote about this and who really leaned into accompanying people from this vantage point. Sometimes I call myself a creativity coach, but that may or may not be the best term. But most of the creativity coaches that I was paying attention to sort of at the time were helping people kind of like get stuff done, get their schedule right, feel motivated. And that's great. But I found like, I feel like I'm coming at this from another angle. I feel like I have to be with people in their process in a different way so they can actually be with whatever is happening in them without the pressure to get stuff done, because then we can find out what's actually happening.
So this is such a different lens. It's such a different lens. Good job making something new. Because we have heard a lot about productivity. This is what was intriguing to me about even just the little quip I first heard about Making Time, your new book. Because and this is why you are slotted, sister, at the very beginning of the year. Because we are all, I think, a little bit or a lot conditioned to hyper-focus on the doing. And when the doing doesn't work, when our list isn't crushed, when the productivity looks a little wonky, my knee jerk is to go back to systems. Like, okay,
Yeah.
well, what's wrong? Like, I need to make more time here, get up earlier here, run faster, run harder here. And you make a very good case in your book, and even what you were just saying, that that does not help us craft a life that is alive. The
Mm.
hyper focus on productivity. And again, please hear me, firstborn female speaking here. I really love a good list, and I have been known to do quite well with lists in general. And then there are moments where that does not work. And so that's why I love how you're talking about this, that sometimes that hyper focus, which is so normal to us. I mean, you make a historical case that, you go back to Taylor and like the
Mhm.
building of the Industrial Revolution, how we
Mhm.
love kind of micro tasking to get the
Mhm.
big task done. But talk to me about why that actually can kick us in the knees when it comes to creating and
Mm.
making things that
Mm.
matter.
Oof. Um, Thank you for that reflection.
Well, you wrote it. I'm just saying it. Thank you.
The best way I can describe it, the difference and why we know the experience of the heavy lift of all the things, but we're not entirely convinced that there's an alternative.
Right.
Um, so the simplest way to kind of have that clear is to say, have you ever sat across from someone who is saying all the right things or doing all the right things, but they were not there?
Like with you.
They were not with you.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
right?
definitely.
Or someone gave you a gift and it was the quote unquote right gift, but you could tell they were giving it to you out of obligation.
Yes.
The difference is in the quality of presence. That
Mm.
actually we know the difference in a felt experience where we're sitting across from someone and maybe they're not saying the right things. And maybe there's some miscommunication or some hiccups, but you feel their clarity of intention because the way they are being
Right.
is open and they're really responding to what's around
They
them,
are
whether
with
they're
you.
doing it.
Even if it's
Yes.
clunky, they're with you. Yeah.
Yes. Or when someone gives you a gift and you're like, what is the what made you think of it? But you can feel their intention. So we actually already know from our experience that the way you are being is always more powerful than what you are doing.
Mm-hmm.
How are you being about this? It's going to move whatever needle we're trying to move so much faster, actually.
Hmm.
And sometimes the way you are being is simply by not trying to fix the problem. Sometimes it is by getting closer to a problem if there's actually a problem. But for example, like if a child is frustrated with a block tower that they're building.
Hypothetically, you've never seen this in your life, but let's say it could happen. Frustration in a child. Okay.
Exactly. And we're in the mode of like fix, 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 right? Like do on the level of doing, either make them cry or fix the tower for them. Um, we all go there. But we also have the option to approach that situation by how are we seeing our child's frustration in this moment? How are we being present with them? Maybe we don't need to do anything. Maybe we just need to move closer, but we're asking a totally different set of questions.
Mm-hmm.
One set of questions is going to be creative. It's going to open up possibility. One set of question is the other, when we're looking at just how do I make this stop by what I'm doing, is going to give us different answers that often feel urgent, maybe falsely urgent, closed-ended. I have to. So we can't get out of the mess of life, but we have a way. We just can decide how we're going to ask questions of ourselves.
So walk me through that with someone who is in the middle of making something. So that
Yeah.
could be, making a shift in their relationships, or making writing a
Mm-hmm.
book, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or creating something in their home or in their work. And they've done all the number crunching. They've got all the bullet points. They know what should happen and they
Mm-hmm.
cannot make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Coach that person through right now. Where do you start on a given Tuesday, backing up from this hyper focus on productivity, instead looking
Yes.
at this in a more creative way,
Yes.
making way? Mm-hmm.
When we all have a big project in mind and a lot of to-dos, it's really easy to believe that we are not the person who can do it until it's done. That in fact, like, we're not going to become the after that we actually sense as possible, until we've gotten the check or the clap, the claps, the applause. So this is an identity issue. We feel like, oh, okay, I want to become someone who can run a marathon. So I am going to train every day, and I'm going to feel the gap every single day that I'm not yet the person who has run a marathon until I have run a marathon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That we know that feeling of a distance between the end of things and where we are.
Mm-hmm.
There's an alternative. So the alternative is to shift your sense of identity into someone who is already the person who can do this thing, who is bringing about this thing. I am already the person who runs marathons. Look, I'm doing it. On the days where I'm resting, I'm doing it.
Mm.
You are your identity is not conditional upon what you have done. You are someone who is engaging with this project for fun. It may be a very serious project, or it may not be. But if you see yourself as participating in something without having to earn anything, then the sense of pressure and conditionality, like the sense of like if and when, totally changes. So a way I like to think about goals is that it's already done out on some level. This thing exists, and you are in a process of bringing it to life. But it's like the analogy of giving birth, right? The baby's in the birth canal. Like, that's done. You're going through a
It sure
process of
is. If she's there, there is no turning back in my experience.
You're feeling the contraction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're making me remember very viscerally. Mm-hmm.
And so if that's true, you're not making the baby happen. You're along for the ride. You're along for the contraction and the rest.
Okay. Here's my question.
Yeah.
For the folks listening, for the skeptics
Mm-hmm.
who have, for example, a book in them or a marathon in them. The marathon might be in them on the couch, but it won't be run until they get their booty out the door and put their shoes on, not in that order. Or I have a book in me. The idea is there, the heartbeat of the book is there, but nothing's on paper. So what are you saying? Are you saying that changing the way I think about the entire creative process unlocks my ability to continue on? Does it stymie? It doesn't make me stay in the birth canal, as it were, to continue your metaphor. So, because I meet a lot of people in my line of work who say, I have had this idea for so long and I've been doing other things. I've been, growing a family or growing a business. I haven't done this. And I feel like there's oftentimes what you're saying. I feel like there's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I just haven't done the work, right? There's a little bit of a gentle coating of shame there. I just haven't made the time. That's typically what I hear. So what do you say to that person who's in that spot?
Right. When especially the closer to our heart a desire or project is, the harder it is sometimes.
For real. Absolutely. Yes.
I would ask them what it's like for them to believe that it's far away, that they're not that person yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask them who they think they need to be in order to do that person that they haven't, do that thing that they haven't done yet.
Mm-hmm.
And they usually have a lot of ideas about discipline and motivation. Mm-hmm. Those are big ones. Mm-hmm. So then I would look at that. And the discipline thing is, I talk about it in the book. We have this idea that discipline is this almost military capacity to show up regardless of what's going on inside. And we notice our not showing up, and so we believe that we are not disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
I have found that to be an unhelpful definition and an unhelpful way of motivating ourselves. But the root of the word discipline is to do with being a disciple, someone who learns. I think that what looks like discipline on the outside for most people in a sustainable way, and there are people who are just going to be 4 a.m. people with regardless.
Right.
But
Yeah.
for most people, what looks like discipline on the outside is an outgrowth of a deep engagement of curiosity with some corner of the world.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Yep. Keep talking.
So what makes it possible, for example, to show up to, I hate to use this example, but it's the first one that comes to mind, the gym.
Okay. I hope some of our folks who are watching on YouTube get to see Maria's face when she's the on-ramp to the gym. Okay.
It's such a source of punishment for most people. It doesn't have to be, but of course it is. So right. I hesitate to even mention it. But
we all get it. We've all had this. Yeah. It's very relatable. Mm-hmm.
There is a study of the self and the body that happens naturally when you're not comparing yourself to what you should be doing and thinking about some abstract standard, but when you're actually paying attention to what's happening. Oh, I can do this today. Oh, interesting. Not okay. This is harder today, but now you know how to actually respond and not say, let's say, like, tear a muscle and make it impossible to show up for 2 more weeks because you've pushed past your actual limit, right? There's a natural kind of study of what is happening in front of you when we are, quote unquote, disciplined. And so I would ask someone, like, what are you enthralled with and paying attention to now? I guarantee you are disciplined about something, and it might not be the thing that you consciously want to be disciplined about. It could be like you were disciplined about making sure that your kid always has a certain experience, and like you're paying so much attention. You could be disciplined about the bottom scroll on the news. You didn't consciously choose it, but you are paying deep attention, and you find yourself watching the news every day, or like multiple times a day. There are things that we are unconsciously or consciously being a disciple of. Mm-hmm. And then there are the things that we consciously want to do that we have often dismissed as like, oh, that's not worthy of my attention. But I would say it's not that you're not disciplined. I guarantee you're being disciplined about something. And it could be something you're shaming yourself for, but let's just pretend, let's just stop pretending you're not disciplined.
Fascinating. So different. You're like the anti-New Year girl. I'm really digging this.
Oh, can I put that on my website?
Yes, you can. That's for you. Okay, you just opened the door for my next question, which is the idea of embracing limits. I'm digging this. So this is a beautiful idea to me. And also I'm not very good at it, particularly in where you are right now, a book release season. Mm-hmm. We have limits. This is true. No matter how we pretend it is or it isn't, it is just true. We have limits on time and our money and our resources and our energy, the goodwill of others. There are limits there. And you write this beautiful mention in your book. You write that the way to stop being trapped by the idea of lack is to embrace it. Mm-hmm. And then you give this beautiful metaphor. A landscape artist often uses a paper viewfinder, a small makeshift frame she places before her eyes to help her see possible compositions in nature. She cannot paint the whole world at once, and she doesn't try. Hold the limits before your eyes like a frame. Well done. Beautifully written, MFA. Will you teach us how to frame?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What a beautiful question. I love starting with what people are resisting. There's always something. There's so much goodness there. I trust our resistance as a source of information constantly.
Mm. Can you give an
So,
example of that? Like, what would
yeah.
people be resisting? Talk to me about that.
So let's go to motivation.
Okay.
Sometimes we're resisting the fact that we are not motivated to do more. I want to. I know I should. Like I want the result of um, getting releasing this book, doing marketing efforts or something. But I am really not motivated, and now I'm in resistance to the fact that I'm not motivated, and I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
make myself motivated. Like whatever we
Uh-huh.
were trying to force.
This is very familiar to me. I feel
Same.
like I'm getting a free counseling session right now. Carry on.
Same. um, so okay, fascinating. I say, um, tell
To
me
this
about this.
hypothetical person who is Kim. Yeah.
Tell me about what it's like to not be motivated. Tell me what this lack of motivation actually is, because it could be a physiological thing. It could be I am um, forcing myself through my day, and I'm not acknowledging that I actually only have the energy for certain things. Because I think that it won't be enough. Okay, fascinating. So your body is telling you what your actual capacity this week is. Our capacity changes. Um, Fascinating. What would happen if we trusted that, if that was just enough? Now we have removed the resistance to our own resistance. Now we're no longer fighting about the fact that some part of us is fighting us. And we're like, oh, okay, now I just have a playground to play in. Now it's just like a fence around a yard. It's neutral. Okay, so that opens up energy. So I would look at embracing limits as um, looking at the part of ourselves that is both saying like, okay, ouch, I'm running up against a wall here. Whatever, it could be time, it could be energetically, could be in our head. There's this one thought that won't stop nagging, and then we look at the part of ourselves that that tells us that shouldn't be happening, and get curious enough about it so that whatever limit we're coming across becomes either a source of information for us, like, ouch, your arm doesn't want to move that way, or um, or just a fact that we have to navigate that day.
Mm-hmm. So, what I hear you saying is that this can transfer according to season of our life because, um, some days I feel wide open to deciding what my limits are. And other days I feel like that's already been written before I wake up. So, I'm wondering how to approach this conversation apart from when we're looking at what we might see as you said, something for fun, writing a
Mm-hmm.
memoir or running a marathon. There are
Mm-hmm.
folks who are listening who are in the middle of seasons that don't feel like they have a lot of choice. They're caretaking for someone who has profound disabilities, or they are in a financial crisis, or because I think your book is for all of us. And your focus on removing ourselves as machines and productivity gurus and instead stepping into our identity as makers and
Mm-hmm.
creatives, not just people who paint. Like we are all intrinsically beautifully made to create. Will you speak a little bit into the people who are in a season where they don't feel like they have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
options?
Yeah. I hear in that question um, this dynamic where we're noticing something in our life, and then another thing, a thought idea comes in that says, this shouldn't be that way.
Yes. Yes.
Which it makes perfect sense. And uh, in fact, there are just things that everyone would agree are undesirable to be experiencing.
Absolutely.
And yet, the quietest, most nagging voice goes like, this shouldn't be that way. Either because we think it's our fault that something is happening, or life is just so overwhelming that there's a part of us that says, no, 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 I would prefer not, please. And I just want to speak to that part and say, yes, it makes complete sense that we wish this limit, this thing was not here. And what would it take for us to stop believing that is somehow means that something is wrong with us in our life, that this is here? Because that's the thing that makes it suffering. I mean, some spiritual traditions have come up with the difference between pain, which is that ouch of the thing that's happening, and then the suffering, which is our judging ourselves for experiencing the thing. That's the part that I would want to just love on and say, it makes perfect sense that you don't want this. And if we can be with it for long enough that we can just be looking at the limit without our judging ourselves for having it. Because when that energy is, we're able to love ourselves for going through something that is really gnarly, then our actual experience of the thing might still suck, but it will suck on 1 degree and not multiple degrees.
Right. A limited amount of horror.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I love that. You mentioned your how different spiritual disciplines or spiritual, I guess, faith families look at suffering and pain, which reminds me to ask you, you spent quite a bit of time with nuns. I'm sure that is an entire podcast question. But off the top of your head, Maria, what did you learn from the nuns? What a loaded question. So I'm sure there are lots of ways you can answer that.
Yeah.
But now that you're removed from that time, tell us a little bit about it and what you learned from them.
Yeah, for some context, I studied with a Benedictine monastery. So these were Benedictine nuns out of South Dakota. Shout out Benedictine Peace Center. And I was lucky enough to receive guidance in guiding other people, in sitting with other people. And one of the things that stuck with me was in their trust of what happens when you are simply with a person or a situation and just sit and listen. They were not focused on doing for people to quote unquote help them as though we have all the answers. They were very insistent that we, as spiritual directors in training, which if you don't know what a spiritual director is, it's someone who sits with someone and helps them listen to what's happening in their spiritual life. That we as spiritual directors in training were not the people with the answers that people were coming to us for, right? We couldn't say like, God is telling you such and such. But they had so much trust in silence and loving presence. The trust really strikes me. I have experienced it myself when I am sitting across from a client and I'm really listening and I'm just reflecting what I'm hearing. And they say, I just don't know what to do about this situation. And I'm there and I don't jump in with an answer, but I am reflecting carefully. They know something. They know enough for the next day, for the next week. So I would say that trust in silence and listening was really stuck with me.
I can hear that in your writing. I can hear that in the way that you talk about this. You owe the South Dakotans because that stuck. That lesson stuck. That I think a lot of what you're saying is we need to allow ourselves the time and the space and the breadth to see what's actually going on instead of just making another list. And we're right in that time of year where lists reign supreme. what would happen if we would take the crown off the list and actually look at what's really happening and what's really a part of what you just said is the resistance, what's really going on.
Hmm.
I love that. I have one final question before my final question. And that is, how has what you are writing about and talking about and what you've kind of been wrestling with in this book and the creation of this book, how has how has knowing what it looks like to be a maker and
Hmm.
knowing what it looks like to make things and to allow things to get unstuck, how has that affected the way you approach releasing a book?
Ooh.
This is a personal question, Maria, because I don't know about you, but I'm really good at talking about what I know. And then when I have to actually do it, it's a totally different ballgame. I wrote a book recently about grace, and I have regrets because now I'm supposed to be gracious, and it's such a pain in the tusher. You try screaming at someone in your family with your grace book on the shelf, and they're
Mhm.
giving it the side eye like, do you need to read chapter 7 one more time, Mom? So, what is this like for you? Because this is rubber seriously hitting the road for you, bowler.
Oh my gosh, how dare you ask me that? No, I'm so glad you did. There were so many moments in the writing of it and now in the releasing phase of it where I have tapped my own shoulder and said, like, "Are you learning your own lesson?" Which I gotta tell you doesn't help. um,
Uh,
there were moments in the writing where I was forcing so much I physically couldn't do it anymore, and I thought, why is this happening? Um, the good news is that, of course, it would happen because I am engaging in something on a deeper level than I ever have before. So, of course, it
mm,
would meet me in the
mm,
deepest way that it ever had before in ways I
mhm,
didn't
mhm.
expect. And now in this phase, it is what it looks like is an ongoing conversation with myself about how much am I expecting and of myself and just the world, and how much am I really engaging and trusting, which feel very different. If I can come up with a list of things I should be doing, which would be expectations of myself, and I have done that, and then I have felt that crunchy, like, this is running against something in me, like either my energy or just life. And I go, oh, okay, yeah, that was an expectation. That was a nice thought. And now I have come across some piece of reality in me, and I can go, okay. And adjust. So it's a constant tweaking process. It's not
Mm,
like I had some perfect balanced book launch at
right,
all.
right.
There were too many things, and then I had to take off some things and then tweak the things that were there and then add things. And so, yeah, balance is a myth. So I believe that it's been a challenge to see what it really is like to live this in practice. And part of, I think, living it in practice is not doing it perfectly and then staying engaged and
Mm,
not going on
mm.
autopilot.
100% yes. And I would even add that the idea of 100% perfectly is another myth. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's a thing. I mean, we work really hard on things and hope that they help people. And so much of how that happens is not really in our control, um, which feels very naked after you've spent so many hours with the words and the ideas. So kudos to you for tweaking and retweaking and tweaking and retweaking instead of just holding fast to your marketing plan Bible and deciding that's the only way that this can happen. That's ridiculous. Okay, here's my last question, and I have a feeling you're going to have an answer. I ask all of my guests about their reading lives. I'm very curious about people and what they read and what they read for fun or what kinds of books they refer to over and over. Is there a book that either you're really stoked about that you for years have recommended to other people, Or is there perhaps a book that you're excited to read in this new year? You can take that
Mm,
question wherever you want. I call it the book nerd question. So
I
please proceed.
I love it. I want to talk about Octavia Butler,
Okay.
and her, particularly Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, because I have just fallen so deeply in love with those books like this month.
Okay.
They're from the 90s, right? These are not recent
I was alive
releases.
then, Maria. I
Yeah.
was alive in the 90s, so it doesn't feel that far away to me.
Right. Same. That was 15 years ago, right? Yeah.
I've
But they are,
heard wonderful things about her work, so I'm excited to hear this from you.
they feel so
Mm,
uh alive. I mean, the first book is set in 2024. So
okay.
they're dystopian novels, and I got to tell you, I am not don't naturally gravitate to fiction. I'm generally gravitate to more poetry and nonfiction. So
Okay.
I just want to say, this is not someone who's like a fiction nerd. I found them gripping, and
Okay.
they are about navigating chaos. It's what it's about, and so interesting, and like uh dark without being grim for no reason.
Ooh.
And yeah, I would, there's a series of those two books, Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents.
Okay, sowers first.
Yes, Sower's
Okay,
first.
and we will link to all of this in the show notes as we always do. I usually hear from at least a lot of people who say, please stop asking that question because I can't afford any more books. And I'm going to say that's not really our issue. We like to spread the word no matter what. You're going to need to figure out your budget.
Check your
Okay,
local library.
totally, 100%. There are lots of ways to find great books. Maria, thank you so much for joining me today. I just loved this conversation. I loved your book. I love the idea of your book. And I'm going to steal those ideas, and implement them into my life by hook or by crook. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to hear how you help people approach 2025 in a new lens. I love it. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. This is so fun.
And welcome to our state. I know you've been living here for a while, but we're really glad to have you.
Happy to be here.